Breaking news this week, as on June 13th, 2025, a federal judge said that Mahmoud Khalil, the prominent Colombia protest activist who was arrested at Colombia back in March by ICE and has been detained in Louisiana ever since, must walk free. Khalil is a green card holder. However, the Trump administration just replied that he's staying locked up in Louisiana. In this video, I'm going to unpack what happened and how this impacts higher education and beyond. Welcome to Humanitas Academia. My name is Jason, and I cover various aspects of college and university education. Thank you for joining me today as I continue to explore and cover the Mahmoud Khalil campus protest and arrest saga. This is a particularly important case to various aspects of university education in North America. If you find educational content like this helpful or interesting, please consider sharing and subscribing. I am nearly at 500 subscribers, a number that seemed impossible when I first began my channel, so thank you very much for your support. Now, let's begin. Mahmoud Khalil was a Palestinian activist and recent Columbia graduate. He was a frontline figure in last spring's Gaza Solidarity encampment at Columbia and was seen negotiating with university officials and speaking to the national press numerous times. He's broadly speaking considered a lawful permanent resident. He's married to a U.S. citizen. And again, on March 8th, 2025, ICE agents arrested him after Secretary of State Marco Rubio invoked a rarely used statute that lets a government deport non-citizens if they're deemed a serious foreign policy threat. This week, a number of events happened that make this case particularly more interesting. This week, a U.S. district judge ruled that the detention of Mahmoud Khalil violated Khalil's constitutional rights and set a token $1 bond and a Friday morning release deadline. However, he did allow a window for the government to appeal this decision. On Friday, June 13th, the deadline had passed and Khalil was still in the Louisiana ICE custody. Later that morning, the Department of Justice, the DOJ, sent a letter to this judge stating that it was holding Khalil on new grounds, alleging omission in his 2024 green card application and claims that he was inadmissible at entry. In other words, the Department of Justice responded and said that the judge did not explicitly order Mahmoud Khalil's release, but rather barred them from detaining him solely based on Marco Rubio's determination, which says that his actions as a pro-Palestinian activist went against U.S. foreign policy. The DOJ letter sent to this judge on Friday states that Khalil will be held on separate grounds, alleging that he omitted information in his immigration documents. The administration told the federal judge on Friday that it does not intend to release Khalil despite the ruling on Wednesday. The administration basically said that the judge's decision didn't factor in other reasons that Khalil was detained, alleging that he was inadmissible to the country as an illegal alien at the time of entry. Thus, this detainment based on these grounds, from the DOJ's perspective, is lawful. The DOJ states that, of course, Khalil has recourse and can seek release through other various administrative processes, but Khalil must demonstrate to the satisfaction of an immigration judge that his release would not pose a danger to property or persons and that he would likely appear for future proceedings. This is a significant change in tone from the initial arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, in which Marco Rubio and others were clearly stating that it was due to his political affiliations that could harm U.S. foreign policy and using the Rarely Used Immigration Act to justify the arrest. I have seen no evidence that Khalil was in the country illegally or that anything was incorrect with his green card status. However, perhaps more information will come to light, as I'm sure his lawyers will appeal this decision, and perhaps we will get more information in the future, which I will cover. As with all videos on this channel, I try to indicate why this matters, particularly to higher education. Mahmoud Khalil's situation has become a flashpoint in debate over academic freedom, political dissent, and the treatment of international students. As I've covered on this channel before, about Columbia, Harvard, and others, universities are still grappling with how to protect free speech on campus in a politically charged time, while also cracking down when said action may bleed over into discrimination, anti-Semitism, vandalism, destruction of property, etc. Advocacy groups often insist that students must be free to protest without fear of detention or deportation. However, critics often cite that these individuals are not American citizens, and they are not necessarily protected by the First Amendment, and that these types of protests have erupted on college campuses as hateful, dangerous, and indeed targeted toward marginalized people such as Jewish students. So Khalil's case highlights a collision between campus activism and national politics. It raises questions about a university's role in the marketplace of ideas. It's prompting a discussion and reflection on how far authorities can go in policing political expression, especially when this expression is viewed as veering into discrimination, anti-Semitism, etc., and perpetuated by non-Americans. In other words, where's the line between legitimate protest and unacceptable, hateful dissent? As a result, Khalil's case is far from just an isolated immigration matter. As I've asserted on this channel before, it's become a litmus test to how a democracy handles dissent within its institutions of higher education, and it's particularly relevant to immigration law. In the weeks ahead, I'm sure we're going to see how Khalil's lawyers deal with the DOJ letter, which refuses to release him, and this shift in tone from a prominent activist having a negative foreign policy effect to one of an individual whose green card status application was flawed from the very beginning. This is a breaking news story and a developing story, so I expect there to be a lot more to come. Please stay tuned to Humanitas Academia for more. Please like and subscribe if you find this information helpful or useful. It's very helpful to the channel and it means a lot to me.